All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Midnight Mutterings. Rapture and I have gathered around the fire for the ninth installment of our podcast series, and I must say it's a little chilly up here in the mountains of Colorado, just outside the beautiful town of Telluride, where fall is in full swing, and the tips of the mountains are indeed covered in snow. I'm getting excited for winter. How about you, Rapture?
Well, I guess we don't have. I'm pretty excited, but I guess we probably don't have too many more winters with those mountains being covered in snow, according to Greta Thunberg. But which actually that actually may be one of the things that could be true. I mean, if you look at Mount Fuji, for example, it doesn't have as much of a snow cap. But that's a bit of a tangent there early on. Yeah, Telluride, beautiful little town, and I hadn't really been aware of this place. Actually, sadly, the thing that made me aware of it was the naming of the new Kia SUV. That'd be a South Korean brand of vehicle. And unfortunately, I think because they decided to name their new larger SUV the Telluride, more people are going to look up this place and become aware of it. And there are these little hamlets, these little white, old Western type hamlets that still exist in the continental United States. And I think they're starting to be discovered and people are starting to go there. I mean, they've always been going there in like a vacationer sense, I guess. Like the insiders, they know about it, the ski resort type people. But I think my prediction is that there will be mass exoduses from urban areas by whites with money. And to be quite honest, we can't escape the people of color either. Like, they have money now and they're quote unquote American, and they will be escaping with the whites to these places. So we still have these beautiful places that exist. I guess enjoy them while they last.
I guess I prefer the win the fight soon enough to preserve them argument, but that's semantics now, isn't it? We wanted to get right off the foot on some content here because we do have quite the list, and it is quite news and political heavy as opposed to our usual banter about social issues. Though don't fret, my friends, it will come into play as it always does here on Midnight Mutterings. So Rapture wanted to open it off talking about an issue that's very personal to him, which is student loan debt and some stuff associated with that.
Yeah, well, oh geez. To address the personal aspect of student loan debt, yeah, I was raised by boomers who wanted the best for me, and so I don't question that aspect of their parenting. But some of the advice they gave me was just take out the government loans. That's a good loan. That's good debt because the interest rates are more fixed or stabilized, and basically they were like, yeah, just load it up. And they, at the time, perhaps I shouldn't have been going to college because I went in just because all my friends were going, and I didn't know what I was doing the first couple of years there, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm getting all this debt, and it's for nothing. It's basically for nothing. I mean, factually, I would probably be better off if I did not have a degree. I mean, it gets complicated when you're changing positions and looking for positions, but that's basically all it does. And not to say there aren't merits within having to complete a degree and learning how to apply yourself over a period of time for academic achievement. Now, to get back to the student loan debt, myself, like many Americans, will find themselves with a bunch of student loan debt. Now, mine's not as bad as, I guess, many of the people these days, but it really depends a lot on like what kind of profession you're going into. Like lawyers and doctors, they get enormous amounts of debt. Now you could say the payoff is better for them.
Well, I see here, I wrote some little handwritten notes just quickly, and I see
Mhm.
that the average student loan debt is about $38,000, which to me was actually, I thought that was lower than what I was expecting. I was expecting something like 50,000, 45,000, but $38,000 is still a lot to be shackled with after you graduate college and you need to buy a car and somewhere to live.
Well, you better not buy a new car because, yeah, oh my God, new car prices and car insurance. And of course, insurance is higher because, you know, you might get hit by a third worlder driving around, get in his
Well,
fifth DUI or something. So yeah,
that's
it's a more expensive world to live in for sure.
right. That's interesting. While we see, here we go on our little tangent, but I'm curious. Car insurance prices in Sweden aren't too horrible. In Michigan, they go between the highest and the second highest in the entire country. Um, in respective of the U.S., I don't know what they're like in Florida. I imagine they're better. You know, when I turned 16 and I was still living in Michigan, my car insurance was $380 a month.
That's insane. I mean, that's a
Yes,
huge chunk of money.
yes, and I know that my mother, her car, she's 39, and her car insurance is, I think, like 180. And, you know, she's been driving for, forever now.
And that's ridiculously high for someone who, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and assume your mom's been a decent driver, decent
No, she
enough,
has.
and someone who's
I mean,
paid into the system for decades.
she drives like a woman, but she's a better driver for a woman. I'll give her that. Um,
And so,
so
yeah, they'll still fleece people like her and I. They'll take a lot more than they should. I've never been in a car accident in my life. Now, if I had to calculate how much I've paid in car insurance, geez, I should have done that before the show. But I can't imagine how much it's been. I mean, in the tens of
see,
thousands easily.
I've been in a car accident that wasn't my fault. I got hit by a dog. In fact, I got I was at a full I was at a full stop in a left turn lane to go into a bank, and I have been sitting there for forever, and I just took my foot off the gas, and the nog was trying to go around someone else to like speed down the road in the middle of the city, and he hit me, and I flew across the other two lanes and landed in the bank, like the bank garden, and he rolled 3 times down the road. But the funny thing, I mean, number one, it's funny it was a nog, just because really, like, and this was just at the start of my red pilling, so I'm like, ugh, those people. But then he had warrants out for his arrest. He was in a stolen rental car with a fake plate, no insurance, of course, and I actually helped pull him from the car. Me and this like massively built black dude from the mall parking lot across the road. We pulled him. We pulled him from the car. I thought he was dead, but no, the nog wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so it threw him into the back of the car when he hit me and he rolled. That's what saved his life. We pulled him out of the car. He was shirtless, sagging pants, scrawny, tattooed, and there was money all over the floor of the car. I'm like, great, I got hit by a drug dealer. It was very interesting that day.
Well, you know, but honestly, Goy, that's your fault. You have to take responsibility for your involvement. And the chances of you being involved in that kind of situation are increased now. So you're going to have to pay more for that.
Yes, I have
It's
to
going,
pay
it's
higher.
going to affect your rate.
Yes.
That's the other thing I don't get about. Well, just okay. I know we're talking about student loan debt, but why do women have better car insurance rates than men? I mean, I get it
Do
that
they
men are
really?
hothead assholes. That's what I've always been told. But the women are like by far the worst drivers. So I don't know. I think there's enough hotheads and enough like just wild sorts of guys who get in enough accidents that they affect us.
I'd have to look into that. That's very interesting. But yeah, to get back onto the student loan debt thing, I'm I'm 20, of course. Most people know that. I've said that a couple times, and most people know that I already do have degrees because I've been in university for a long time, not to toot my own horn. But I'm lucky enough not to have suffered through student loan debt, um, managing to barely avoid it. I did actually have my mother at one point suggest the same thing to me, though. My first year up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I attended Michigan Tech, and she suggested the same thing. Like, and you could just, and no one in my family is Jewish or not Jewish at all, but like the caricature comes out, like you just hear the take out the federal debt, goy. There's no problem taking out federal student loan
And
debt.
then you have freaking Donald Trump trying to lecture us, trying to talk down to us. You know, you selected the maximum amount. Okay, it's like, okay, Donald, I'd like to see you make it through an entire academic semester on like $1,500 or something.
Right,
Like,
but I actually,
because after they take out for the technology fee and the all, and of course you have to rent a place, and those have become a lot more expensive, and they don't factor in summer. So you have this pittance of money that it seems like a lot when you first get it at the beginning of the semester, and then you're starving toward finals week. But you know how
right.
that is.
I actually had this conversation. I think you were involved in it at one point, and we're in some group chats together with some other people, and there was a gentleman who I really enjoy talking to, a friend of ours from the south of the United States, and he was talking about how people just have to pay back the student loan debt. They were dumb enough to take out the debt. This is their fault. Blah blah. And I actually managed, much to my surprise, not because he's unreasonable, but because this is something people are generally pretty passionate about. I actually managed to convince him about the scam that is the federal student debt program. Like, um, the entire time I was in school, and I'm sure it's the same for you, because this has really been post boomer. What they pushed was go to college. You have to go to college. You have to get a degree. College is the only path, the only smart path, which also means you have to take out student loans. You have to go into debt. Debt is a necessity to get into college. So they pushed people, and they still push people en masse to go into debt to get into college, and then people can't pay back this debt. And really, when you have a system that is pushing everyone to do this, and you have tens of millions of people in debt who can't pay it back, but were advised and told to do this by literally everyone, there is honestly very little individual responsibility with that. That's a collective defectiveness that people decide to push on the individual, when in reality the individual was acting on the advice of the collective.
That's a good way of putting it. And sure, I was naive and stupid back then. I mean, I was 18, and
No, but you
when
still,
I was your age, I was nowhere near to the stage you're at, in terms of your understanding of these things. Basically, I was just fill out the forms. They give you the forms. This is where you go. You do it. You pay. And you get money deposited into your account. It, if you want to say that the people are stupid for doing that, okay, fine. That's fair if you want to have that perspective.
no,
At the
see,
same time, it's
I
not
don't,
very it's not very understanding of what's happening,
no,
to your
it
culture.
it's not fair though, and I get what you're trying to say by fair, like people are dumb, but it's not fair. I mean, you have to think about it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with the experience, but this is going off of friends I've had. Like you talked about, okay, you go here, you fill out this document, you go here and you submit it, and you get the money. Like, but along the way, and before you even start the process, your teachers are telling you to do it, your counselors are telling you to do it, the university is telling you to do it, your parents are telling you to do it, all your friends and family are telling you to do it. Everyone is telling you, go fill out the document, go submit the document, get the bank account deposit. Everyone is telling you to do it along the way. At least the vast majority of people are going to do it, from your family to the academic institutions to the government itself. So I really do not think people are dumb for doing this. They're following advice. I mean, you're in most cases an 18, 19-year-old kid who has never dealt with a large sum of money in his life and has never had to pay such a large sum of money in his or her life to do something like go to college. So you're following the advice of the government, the school, and your family. That doesn't make you dumb.
Well, really, if you looked at how things were in the past, you would think that, okay, here's a kid who he doesn't know what he wants to do. You might, as a parent, you might want to tell him he can do whatever he wants, but maybe he should be pushed toward a trade or something until he can figure out what he does want to do at a higher level in terms of academic study. But they're not doing that anymore. This thing, stay away from. You don't want to be one of those people. Or at least that's how it was even back in the 90s. You don't want to be one of those people who. I mean, people would make fun. I remember some kids in my high school were talking about what colleges they're going to go to, and they asked me, and I didn't know, and they said, well, that's okay if you like working with your hands, but they were just like making fun of me at the time, and to think that was kind of the perspective. Don't be one of those grease monkeys. Don't be one of those people who actually has skills.
See, that was when I was early in school. That was also the perception still. However, that has actually started to radically change. There are a ton of people my age and younger who are going into trades now, and there is actually a big push to get people into the trades. In fact, we never talked about it on the show, but the trades are overwhelmingly white, of course, and a lot of people are going into them. And the program is run by the government. This trade training program, which is great.
Well, trades are uh, a big diversion here in a way. So I don't want you to go doing that, because I would argue that they're being taken over by foreigners. But
that's to really shorten it up. Donald Trump is signing over trade training to private corporations, who are then going to be able to get people in on like H-1Bs to learn trades. So it's going to flood the trade market, which is almost totally white, with Pajites and Africans and based Hispanics.
Whoever shows up, basically.
Yes.
Whoever shows up and maybe can't speak English that well.
Right, but as long as they have just a high enough IQ to plane a board, boy oh boy, they're getting that trade training. Screw you, Whitey.
And ironically, a lot of these positions, I would have, at least financially, perhaps not in terms of my, philosophical development or whatever, political, whatever. I probably would have been much better economically if I had gone into the trades and become a mechanic. Certainly economically, because it's stable work. There's always a demand the longer you've been working. If you've been working in those fields, say your training is a year or two or something. If you've been working since you're 20, and I'm closing in on 40, I mean, that's a ton of experience. You can go where you want. You can do what you want. You can even start your own business and work for yourself. I mean, the options are just so much better for people in the trades than because back in the 80s and 90s, we thought that, we'll all just go to college, we'll drink, we'll have sex for 4 years, and then we'll go into our cubicle jobs and drive around in our Porsches or something. And we might not be happy being stuck in a cubicle, but hey, it's a guarantee of high income. And that world just seems so late 90s to me. You think of Neo in The Matrix, how he's so unhappy working, and he's probably getting paid a shit ton of money working in the skyscraper. Or what's that one movie, Office? Is it Office Space, I think? They always paint these people as just miserable, but they had it kind of easy. And but we always thought we were guaranteed those positions, and a lot of that has been done away with. Now, we're talking about the student loan debt. I don't want to say that I think that people like myself who just sign the papers and get the money, I don't want to say, we're just poor victims. I mean, we were somewhat complicit in it. But at the same time, I'd like people to take a more balanced perspective too, because it's always easy to point your finger at someone who has debt when you don't have any yourself, perhaps, and blah blah blah.
See, I do more take the perspective that people who fall into the trap and are totally unaware and they're acting on the advice of everyone, which is what most people do. I do take the position they're victims. They're victims of a wider society that has a systemic problem in terms of how they get people into college and how they get people into debt. I do view this as a victimhood narrative. The thing that I don't view as victimhood is people who spend their college loan debt money on social justice degrees. And I say that because you could always make the argument, well, they were told they could make money. No, no one, I guarantee you, no one in the entire world from sea to shining sea across to China and back again has ever looked someone dead in the eye and said, you can make money with a Black Studies degree. That has never happened. Ever. That has
Yeah,
never
there's
happened.
just this huge demand. We need people with perspectives on how we should view Black people. We need to pay them money for it.
Right. It's so no, I do the people who take stupid degrees where they know they're not going to make any money and
I
they're
mean,
still
honestly, I might fall into this category. No, I thought there would be a career path, albeit a low paying career path. I won't get into what my specific course of study was, but there was supposed to be a career path. But anyway, I had to diverge from that.
That's okay. No, my point is people are victims of the student loan debt trap, but people people who pick dumb degrees where they don't make any money, they're just stupid. Um, you know, people will tell you you're in women's study. What the hell are you going to do with women's studies? No one again has ever walked up to you and gone, "Do you want to go into women's studies? I can tell you about the job growth in that field." No, that's never happened in the history of the planet. It's never happened, never will happen. The only
Yeah.
people the only people who make money in women's studies are the hook-nosed Jewish female professors who are spewing their bile to the class.
Well,
They're
here's
the
the
only
thing.
people who make
Here's the thing.
money.
You have a lot of white students going into these majors, and they think, well, I could be that professor, but they don't even see that like a lot of these quote unquote white professors they have are actually Jewish, and those paths are not open to them. Even if they were, there would be way too many degree holders for positions. So I'm not going to say that it's just the Jews that are keeping them out. No, I mean just competition would keep out like 90-some% of them. But
Most of them have to become librarians.
well, I mean, librarians aren't really a thing of the future. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Well, public libraries are actually still increasing in number. um, it's it, it is an archaic institution that people keep putting money in. But hey, I think that when we take control of society eventually, having something like the public library still is useful. That way we don't have to rebuild them. But that's kind of tangential. My
well, yeah. Sadly, I mean, they have all these libraries, but there's no books in them anymore. They're just computer labs for the homeless.
Well,
That's
no, they still have books. But you are right about the computer labs for the homeless thing. Most of them do have like entire floors of computers that are just sat at by the detritus of society. Um,
I mean, it is a nice thing if you move into an area you don't have your things up. You can go to a computer, you can maybe get some basic things done, but what it's become is just a joke. But okay,
there,
back to
there are people who sit there all day, and I guess I guess I'm wondering, why don't you go take out a student loan and go to college? Just go take out a student loan, guy.
well, the thing about student loan debt is I don't pretend to know all the numbers. Maybe you know more about this than I do, seeing as how you're more number savvy. But when you see these graduations for colleges, and you see all these like Black students and Latino students who, I mean, quite frankly, they're not the image you think of when you think of a college graduate, and they, you wonder how they got there in the first place. But you'd think they're saddled with debt, but I wonder how much of that is, paid for, like written off by Big Brother because of affirmative action and various
Well,
programs.
some of it is. Some of it is, and a lot of it is also universities will find a way to give them reduced rates. So something a lot of American universities do is like housing. I can't even think of the correct term, but it's basically like brown people housing. Like, oh, you're from a disadvantaged background, i.e., you're brown, so we're going to put
You're disadvantaged. Just look at you.
yeah, right. So you're
That's
from a
not racist.
you're from a disadvantaged background, a poor area. They're going to list all of these things except for saying that you're brown, and then they're going to put you in specifically cheap housing. So the white student might be paying, $11,000 for their housing, but
Like
you're
1,100 a month.
right. You, sir, are only paying $3,000 a year for your college housing because you're from a disadvantaged background. And universities do all kinds of stuff like that. They have, they'll get reduced or even free books for people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So again, you have the white student who's buying $800 in books every semester, but you have the brown person who might only be spending $80 in books.
Let's bring back those nice fuzzy memories of, it's like you have $100 and you really want to get some food, but you got to get this book for your class that costs like $90. What do you do? That's what college is all about.
So, these people do have debt and they do get saddled with debt, but on average, they have a lot of upper hand in how they're treated. And number two is
affirmative hiring.
Right, exactly.
After graduation too.
A lot of them are like, you have these colleges who, like, historically black colleges or department, like Harvard has departments dedicated to this. Like, we're going to get you a job. Again, the unfortunate disadvantaged people, i.e., the brown people, are going to get a lot of help in finding a job. I'm not saying they're going to be able to stay at that job because they certainly didn't pay attention to their classes. It is a widespread problem, and it is openly acknowledged. Anyone could Google this, and you'll see dozens of articles that professors do just give brown people good grades. It's very common practice in academia now. Just Google it.
I've seen it. I've had people of color friends in college, and like I would compare, say, my exam essays to theirs, and mine just blew them out of the water. I'm not just being, I'm not just holding myself up here, but they would get like A's and I would get B's or something like that.
No, I've had the same experience. And you just kind of have to, at this point where we are now, you can't really do anything. You have to live with it. But it is just an example of how these people get pushed through the education system, even if they're totally unable to do the work when they're done. But hey, you're a black guy, so I'm going to give you an A.
And while we're on the subject, I'll just say, without mentioning my once upon a time supposed career path, you go into these group interviews, and
interview?
Yeah, group interviews. I don't want to get into too many details, but you go in a group interview, there'd be like 10 people in there, so you'd have to try to make yourself stand out, and it would be like 9 guys to 1 girl, and the hiring tended to favor women even if it was a 50-50 mix. So I mean, the chances of being hired as a guy were much lower. So there's a lot of things working against the straight white male. I don't want to give into victimhood mentality. That's one of the things we try to avoid here on the dissident right, if we can even call it that anymore. But okay, so to get back to the student loan stuff, for myself, I've paid a decent amount toward my loan. I've probably paid about half of it That doesn't matter because of the interest, boy. And
But
over the
why?
years when I was struggling out in
A lot of people
California,
interest.
yeah, you should have factored in the interest. Um, and so despite this being quote unquote good debt, it doesn't matter. You're still, you know, it is what it is. I don't advise it for most people unless there's something very specific they want to do. But okay, let's get to the heart of the matter because we've been talking for a while without even getting to the real point of why we're talking about this. That being student loan debt forgiveness by the Democratic presidential candidates. And the main thing I want to talk about this, imagine you're one of these people who's struggled and paid off your student loan. Like you've struggled for over a decade paying that off. And then a few years later, a Democratic candidate comes along and says, "Oh, all these other people, you don't have to do it." So, I mean, first of all, that would probably rub a lot of people the wrong way. I don't know. I think, or it could just be that everyone's got to finally, we don't have to deal with it. Maybe it's not that big of an issue. But if I just finished suffering for like 15 years paying off student loan debt, having like a much reduced lifestyle as a result, and then, Deshaun gets his $50,000 of debt erased upon graduation or something, that would rub me the wrong way, I would think.
So removing the racial aspect here, I actually think this falls way more under party lines. I think you'd have an overwhelming amount of Democrats, regardless if they struggled and paid off their debt. Maybe except for the boomers, but they paid $500 a semester and can make it during college. The fucks. You're going to have most Democrats and probably most independents and centrists who aren't really going to care. They're going to think it was a good thing that people are able to get kind of a leg up. The Republicans will be furious. Their obsession with fiscal policy. The country can turn as brown as they. It doesn't matter how brown the country.
Responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. They're going to rage about. We're teaching people to not pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You got to be able to pull yourself along the concrete, your own strength. Blah 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 blah. I mean,
I don't care if you're black, if you're gay. I just care if you pay your own debt.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. I don't care if the country is brown as long as you love God and hard work. Blah blah blah. I mean,
I don't care if you're black and gay. I'll sleep with you as long as you pay your student loans on time.
Yes, exactly. They're going to be furious. They're just going to be irate, which I find it, I'm a bit cynical toward the average Republican and conservative in the West in general. But I find it hilarious when they get worked up about things. It's like they are so far removed from the actual fight. They still think the actual fight is pay your student loan debt. No, that's not the fight. That's like a tangential issue that the Jews want you to be distracted with, meaning they want you to keep advocating paying it. Because
this is all a fiscal thing. If we can just address economics of the country, we can make everything great again.
Right, and I think this obsession with addressing the economics is honestly a great point for us to move over into one of the things that they always tell us is good for our economy, which is refugees and immigrants. We talked a bit about the hurricane in Florida, and we actually mentioned in the episode the potential for boats coming from Grand Bahama, and literally that same day I read a news article about 1,000 Bahamians arriving in Palm Beach, Florida. They were taken aboard a cruise ship called the Grand Celebration, which is owned by a Caribbean company, interestingly enough. But they keep making trips. They take 220 tons of supplies, and then they bring back about 1,000 people, and the amount of people who they could potentially bring to the United States is 70,000, and specifically to Florida, and specifically to the Palm Beach area, though I'm sure they'd spread them out, right? And the immigration czar in the Trump administration, whose name I've suddenly forgotten, has issued a blank check that as long as you have some kind of identity document and no criminal record, you will be let in.
Well, and that's the thing. So they say, well, you know, you could say Plymouth Rock didn't land on them. The freaking Bahamians landed on us or something. These these storms. This is the new ploy, and I think we talked about this already. But it's the new ploy. That's why they really wanted it to go over Puerto Rico, which had a few advantages to the progressives and the progressives' perspective over, say, a place like the Bahamas, because the Bahamas were like British citizens or something. Whereas the Puerto Ricans, as soon as they get here, even as refugees, they can vote, and there's 3 million of them, as opposed to there being like 100,000 Bahamians. So
Something.
Either way, it doesn't matter wherever the storm goes. That's where the people are going to be coming from. That's their new ploy. That's. I mean, as if the demographic situation isn't bad enough. Now, how are you tying this into the student loan debt and stuff? I mean, I assume these people are going to college, but it's kind of a pathetic image of.
Well, no, I wasn't tying it to student loan debt. I was moving on with our list topic.
Okay, well, it's just imagine these people coming from squalor with like this dead expression on their face, and they have nothing.
Well, no,
their name. They're gonna help our country. They're gonna lift us up. You know, these people just being, brought along on a cruise ship.
I agree with making fun of that narrative that they're gonna help us. But if you look at the video of them like lining up to get on the boats to come to the U.S., they have cell phones, they're dressed in nice clothes, most of them have multiple suitcases.
A lot of them are fat.
Yeah, like horrendous, like fat, obese black grandmas, and there is destruction all around them, but these people don't look like they're like imminently dying. They look fine, and even if they were struggling, it's not incumbent upon us to take them in. Legally speaking, it's the British. They're the problem with the British. The Bahamas is technically an independent country, but Her Majesty Elizabeth II is still the Queen of the Bahamas, and Britain still provides them with a lot of services. So legally, the British are obligated to help them, and the British are helping them. Not that I think the British should have to; they absolutely shouldn't have to. But instead of, Trump honestly could just be saying this is the problem of the British and the problem of the government of the Bahamas. No, instead, the U.S. government is doing literally everything possible to bring these people to Florida. And of course, they'll be able to make the argument that, well, they speak English and the Bahamas is right next to Florida and these people understand our history, so we can get them green cards right away, which means they can vote right away.
Oh, they understand our history, so I'm sure they'll lecture us about that.
Oh yeah, I guarantee you, if they bring 70,000 Bahamanians to Florida, probably half of them, at least most of the adults, will be voting. They'll find a way. They'll get them green cards, lickety split.
Yeah, they're not going to have them wait around for like 6 years to get their citizenship to vote. That's not the purpose of bringing them here. Well, the purpose being to get them to vote right away, and because this is such short-sightedness, these people were against, and it's a various group. It's a plethora of forces against us at this point. They want the short term and the long term. They really don't. They're not going to settle just for the long term. They want the short term. This is why they're hurrying people here, from their perspective, hopefully before the 2020 election. Why?
Oh
I
yes,
don't know. I don't know what they're so worried about with Donald Trump. I mean,
they're worried. They're worried. I know Donald Trump is like their greatest ally, right? But frankly, they're worried that Donald Trump is going to run extremely far to the right again and rile up the white people. And they know that they can't, like, once Donald Trump riles up the white people, which I don't think he'll be able to do again, frankly. But if he does, they know that they can't tamp it down. There's no way to be like, okay, white people, calm down, we can bring some of you back into the fold. No, they're not able to do that. So the only solution is raw numbers of brown people to outvote white people.
yeah, they're going for the headshot. You know, they want this over now.
They do, and there's a chance that Texas could turn blue, and if Texas turns blue, the Republicans are done. They don't. Oh God, they never
Okay,
win another presidential election.
Texas is a big question mark for me. I don't pretend to understand it in terms of how long it will take to happen, but I'm under the impression that it will happen soon. Now, Florida, I really have a finger on the pulse of, and like I said 2 years ago,
I don't.
when Trump won, I thought there's enough support for him here. There's enough MAGA Pete's here that he will hold it in 2020. Now, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure at all. I mean, they have, like I said, they've been bringing in hundreds of thousands of refugees who can vote. Anti-Trumpism is at an all-time, is that a fever pitch, right? I don't know. I'd be surprised if he wins Florida 2020.
See, I'd be very shocked if he won Florida. However, we do have to remember it is like the homeland of the boomer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're taking in enough snowbirds that, who want to make America great again by not leaving their children any inheritance, that we'll be able to hold Florida for another election.
Right, and we should talk a bit about Trump here, because we do have a couple things. The biggest thing is this Israeli spying scandal. Now, are you familiar with this at all?
Only vaguely. I saw a few reports that there had been basically cell phone towers that have been allowed to be kind of hanging around, was it Washington, spying on?
Yes, so around the Capitol building and around the White House, these things were installed to listen and get the data from encrypted cell phones, and the U.S. intelligence agencies.
These are Russian towers, right?
They identified them as Israeli. They tracked everything to Israeli intelligence. They told Donald Trump about this a long time ago, and Donald Trump literally just said, "I don't believe you. I'm not going to do anything about it." So as far as we're aware, as far as the news and the public and what institutions will reveal, is he's decided to do nothing because he just doesn't believe Israel would do this. So not only do the Jews, and I find this funny, not only do the Jews totally control the United States government, they're still so paranoid that they had to set up listening devices, because they just have to make sure that there's no one in any corner of the U.S. government going,
like Jared Kushner's
what's up
not.
with the Jews?
Jared Kushner's like their ultimate listening device.
Right,
He might even be a machine. I don't even believe he's human. He looks like Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Hey, don't insult Data like that, man.
I'm sorry. What's that actor's name?
I have no idea. I think I know actor names. The only Star Trek actor name I can remember is Kate Mulgrew. I just totally lost my train of thought. You got me on Star Trek. Damn it, Rapture.
That's what I do.
Anyway, yes.
Brent Spiner. Sorry, Brent. Didn't mean to.
Wait, Spiner?
Rub you around.
Spiner. Is there some echo on that, Spiner?
Probably. I mean, he seems pretty high IQ, right, in the show?
Yeah. Anywho, yeah, Donald Trump won't do anything about Israel spying on his own government, which just goes to show how in the pocket of these people he is.
And I guess there's been talk that Netanyahu is losing favorability in Israel. So maybe there are factions within Israeli politics that don't want these extreme measures, but at the same time, the ones who are currently in power, they want these measures. So that's all that really matters.
The thing with Israeli politics is there are certain Jews who don't want to do as extreme things as the Netanyahu government has done, but they're still going to do everything they have to do for Jews. I mean, they're not going to stop and relinquish all of the power they have. There are no Jews going, we have to give up Zog, we have to give up our control of the finance system, we have to give up our manipulation of the West, we have to help the white people. No, there are no Jews saying that. None.
Yeah, they're just like, maybe we don't want a war with Iran right now, or something.
Right, exactly. Maybe
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there are people there who are like, maybe we should wait on bombing Iran. Give it a little bit, and then we glass them. Just don't glass them yet.
Okay, so I have something for you from the early life section of Brent Spiner's Wikipedia page. Brent J. Spiner was born on February 2nd, 1949 in Houston, Texas, to Sylvia and Jack Spiner, a Jewish family who owned a furniture store.
Isn't it amazing how when you're in this movement, you just know? Like, you just hear a name and you're like, yeah, that's a Jew.
It's like if you based everything off of like what you saw on TV, you would think like 80% of the country's white population is Jewish. You would think we're all Jews.
Yeah, but they also don't tell you these people are Jewish. They don't tell you that Spiner is Jewish. They didn't tell you that Leonard Nimoy was Jewish, even though it was fucking obvious. They don't tell you these things. They just want you to think this is just a normal white guy, Goy. This should be your male figure to aspire to be, Goy.
That's what really kind of drove me crazy about the JQ was finding out that people like William Shatner, the all-American captain, right? He's Jewish, and it wasn't James Dean Jewish too. I forget, but I'd have to look that up.
Shatner was Jewish, but it doesn't surprise me.
But it's just like the most American sorts that have been portrayed by Hollywood. And you have to think that's kind of it's either by design just because they want to get their guy the job. He's a good boy, let's get him a job. But from a more sinister angle, it could be that they really want to cement American identity with Jewish heritage, something like that, because it's pretty. You don't need me to tell you how pervasive it is.
Well, they just want people of notoriety to be Jewish. But the interesting thing is, of course, they don't want them to be like, they don't want everyone to know that Spiner is Jewish. They don't care if people know, but they don't want it broadcast, right? They don't want everyone going, Spiner, the Jew. No. They want him to be of notoriety, though. The Jews don't care if everyone knows someone is Jewish, as long as they know they're Jewish and that person is famous. That's how Jews work.
Yeah, it's funny if you notice this about watching shows in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's funny when they reveal characters that they're okay with knowing that they're Jewish, because they're always like these good victims carrying around their menorah and stuff. They're being, like I was telling you guys. I was watching the late 80s series Beauty and the Beast with our good progressive tweeter Ron Perlman at Pearl Mutations, and he's like the worst of the Hollywood, or one of the worst of the Hollywood Jews on Twitter. But I was a big fan of his acting side, so I was watching this Beauty and the Beast series, and like I think the third episode in, there's like a white guy, a rich, good-looking white guy is trying to like buy up all the tenements, and he's trying to kick out the poor Jewish people, and he's sending people to rough them up in the night and stuff. And of course, they never tell you that Vincent the Beast is Jewish himself. It's just, I mean,
Oh yeah, because
it goes,
it's always it's always white people who own the tenements and white
in New
people
York
who are
City, yeah, I mean,
selective about who lives there.
it was never the Jews who, were slumlords in New York City. I don't know where you would get that idea from.
Were they still are?
I need to work on my accent. I don't really know how to. Boy, we would never think about
Yeah,
causing
I'm,
other races to live in poor conditions.
I'm not very good at the Jew voice either. However, I do highly enjoy it. Um, we got it kind of into tenements in New York City. I guess that's a good little segue on to this video. I don't know if you saw it, but you'll see it in the show of all of the Mexicans clogging up the middle of New York City for Mexican Independence Day. They're literally like on top of cars, blocking traffic, waving Mexican flags. Just bad.
I didn't see this. I'll have to look this up. So it sounds.
Yeah, you'll
bad.
see it in the video. I'll send you the link too. And you got all these white people who were upset. You had all these white people who were like, this is what an invasion looks like. New York City is like occupied territory, blah, blah. And, I'm sitting there reading this like, oh, wow, no shit, you're just catching on. But you had all these, like, the Jews were out in full force, man. This is racism. This isn't an occupation. They're celebrating their heritage. You just, like, the Jews were in full force defending these people. And it's like, every time anything happens that is so blatantly obvious, the Jews are like, no, the thing you just saw before your very eyes, no, that didn't happen, no. And it's just, people get sick of it.
Well, you know what New York City's appearing like to me? It seems like it's just on permanent rotation. You'll have the Mexican Independence Day, and you'll have the Muslims flogging themselves on Muhammad's birthday or something like that. I don't know. The one where they're always like hitting themselves, and then so they're massing in the streets, and then they always love talking about I forget which the various Caribbean countries. They always have these massive parades in New York City. It's probably the Puerto Ricans, but it could be other groups as well. It'll just flood the streets with Latino Islanders and Black Islanders, and it just seems like it's on permanent rotation. And then the gays get their turn. I mean, I think all the months are booked at this point in New York City. It's just like a rotating, a non-ending rotating parade of people that don't belong here, that don't share our values, and people that are genuinely bad for the country, right? I mean,
but man, that's their right to do it, Goy. It's their constitutional right to assembly and freedom of speech.
I mean, I just want, if Donald Trump ever does get around to building the wall in Mexico, when he's done with that, he needs to just build a wall around New York City, because I don't see anything good coming out of there. I mean, I'm sure it has some wonderful libraries, to get back to that. I know it does. They have some awesome collections. They probably have some old architecture, and it's kind of a gym in and of itself, but it's completely occupied at this point, and I don't really want those people multiplying and then spreading out to us here in Telluride.
Well, no, it's a city that we're gonna have to. It'll take a lot of effort to take back, and probably some effort that we can't talk about openly. But anyway.
Yeah, I feel like I can't talk about anything openly anymore. It's like, I mean, the reality in front of our faces is something we can't talk about. It's bad.
What did you hear? This isn't even in our show notes, but yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security's secretary, whose name again I don't know, and I think he's only acting, but that's not the point. He designated white nationalist terrorism a threat. Now, he didn't designate white nationalism itself as a terror threat, he designated white nationalist terrorists as a terror threat.
Oh, well, that's a great distinction. Thank you.
Right. So there is a distinction. However, it's such an unclear rule change that no one is really sure. And again, I don't trust the federal government with this. You know, they could just slap anyone with being a white nationalist terrorist. So I was like, I'm like my normie. I do follow a couple things on my normie account. I'm like, I'ma just unfollow all this stuff on my normie account, like removing my phone number for shit. I'm like, I ain't playing your games.
Well, you have the boomers who are like, that's good. I hope they electrify these white nationalists. Like,
They want to hurt.
we have such a divide.
They want to hurt Candace Owens and C.J. Pearson. Oh my God! Save the base blacks.
And
Save
they're doing some of our best work.
They do some of our best work.
I love seeing them on Hannity.
And I saw a Twitter thing. I think it was retweeted by Mike from DRS. Like this fat black broad, younger, sitting in a chair in a hotel room, doing a MAGA rap, and it was like M to the A to the G to the A, plus the K, like keep America. It was awful, just horrible. And she's like MAGA from head to toe. And there was absolutely no way this chick believed anything she was singing. But more and more of the blacks are figuring out that, oh yeah, Grandpa Boomer will fly open the checkbook for especially a young-based black person.
Well, do you think the black guys, if they really want to know where the white women are at, they would just put on a MAGA hat and like go around the countryside and fathers would be throwing their daughters at these guys.
No, that's the thing.
The weird thing is they don't actually want that to happen, but they,
Right, but they can't say anything. I always make this point to various people I know. These fathers who their daughters bring home the based black boyfriend, they hate that. They never wanted to see this. They thought teaching their daughter conservative values would avoid this, but they always had to say, I have no problem with hard-working, Constitution-loving, church-going black folk. And then their daughter will bring home, even if it's just fake AstroTurf, a supposedly Constitution-loving, hard-working, based black kid, and the father literally has to just eat his own plate of shit. Like, go on.
That's a good way of putting it.
You get to stick your spoon in there, and you get to eat your own plate of shit because you don't want to be a hypocrite. I mean, I would be a hypocrite in that case, and I hope some people are. But the point is, most of these people are not going to espouse their actual view, and they're going to eat their own plate of shit because they're too embarrassed to do otherwise.
Is this a title idea?
Eat your own plate of shit.
Episode 9.
Episode 9. Eat your own plate of shit.
Oh, I gotta find out what that's all about. Okay, so but the thing is, I think that they eventually will kind of they'll never say they're a white nationalist, but they'll finally get to the point where they've seen enough and they'll talk to us, But at that point, they're basically spending their off hours raising their mixed race grandchildren, their grandson with an afro and stuff, and they're like, yes, I'm woke now.
I have a family member who was actually a staunch Republican, staunch conservative. He's Danish, so but anyway, he moved to the U.S. when he married his first wife, who was an American, and they had a daughter. And I'm not technically related to this man. I'm related through marriage to one of my aunts, but anyway, his first daughter is a total mud shark. All she did for years and years and years, college and her teenage year, all of it was ride the black cock carousel. That's all she did. And she ended up having 3 mixed race kids, 2 girls and a boy. The oldest boy is a cousin of mine, unfortunately. However, she never raised any of these kids. Her dad, her conservative white Danish dad and conservative white American mom, have ended up doing the overwhelming majority of the parental care for these kids, and it turned them into shitlibs. Because
so it could work either way. I mean, if that's their reality, if that's their family, then they have to then defend it. So I could see how
it turned them into shitlibs, massive shitlibs, because my uncle is just, you could literally see it broke him in, like, because he adores his daughter, would give her money, bought her houses, has helped her move all over the country numerous times, put her through college more than once. So he's a total cuck to his own daughter. And when she just keeps spitting out black babies, he just had to take care of them because his daughter could do no wrong. So he had to change his worldview in accordance with that.
I mean, see, that's the thing. There's no nice way of saying this is permanent damage, right? Because really, this guy's legacy is those Afro babies, right? I mean, and it might not be the legacy he wants, but that's the one he's stuck with. And I mean, at that point, you have a choice. I mean,
oh no, do you want to hear the worst part of the story? I'll go on. She actually ended up recently, in the past couple of years, marrying a white guy, short, fat, total loser white guy. Not that I'm a great looker myself, but he's nothing to behold. And ended up marrying this short, fat white guy, and they've had 2 kids together. And I see the short, fat white guy as like the biggest cuck of them all. Would you really marry a woman who's had more black dick than probably the entire city of Detroit and have 2 kids with her? What the hell is wrong with you?
oh jeez. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Those, you'll notice these white women that are mud sharks. You got to stay away from them. They're done. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they're excommunicated. They're done.
The only option for them is one day we deport them to whatever random brown country we see fit, because they can't stay here. They can't stay here.
I mean, basically, you have to understand what happened there is they know that white men can't do anything about their choices, or, will go to prison, right? And so they use the power of the state to then betray their own people and to leave a mangled genetic legacy as a result. That's a rather unsympathetic way of putting it, but that's certainly
right.
A take.
They use the power of the state to fulfill their most base, perverted desires. Women, again, in a healthy society, women are an incredible asset. They used to teach things like patriotism and devotion, and they used to be one of the biggest assets of a nation, and they can be again. I think we can make our women amazing once again, and I hopefully plan to live to see it. But when they're not, women don't have a middle ground. A lot of white men just go about their business and don't want to be bugged. Women are either super based or they are destructive in some manner. Even if it's it can still be a moderately conservative woman, but have you met my daughter's Hispanic boyfriend Carlos? He wears a MAGA hat and wants to be a police officer. That's another narrative from the American side of the family.
Did Carlos ever show you his stab wounds? His gunshot wounds?
Oh yeah. So, women will be destructive, and I had a cousin who dated a Hispanic guy who wanted to be a cop, and her parents were very obviously against it in private conversation, and they were delighted when they broke up. My uncle, he was through the moon. He could not be happier. But when they were together, they were oh, do you want to meet Carlo? He's such a fantastic guy. He wants to be, and they're dousing this brown guy who they obviously hate with love and affection. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you people?
Well, okay, I want to be fair too, because I've said some pretty harsh observations of the mud shark community. But we white guys tend to have a thing for Asian women. But I
I've never
wanted
had
to.
this problem.
Oh, well, that's great, James, and that's very healthy. But I wanted to kind of illustrate a difference here, just to be fair, because first of all, and this will seem very sexist, seem very patriarchal, and
But
and whatnot. But okay, if you think of women as possessions, we would be taking Asian women, whereas the black guys are taking white women within our own country. And also, that's another thing. It's a false comparison to say that Asian people are the same as black people. That's not true at all. They're very different, very, very different. So I'm not trying to justify yellow fever. I'm just saying that's not the same thing as mud shark at all. I mean, genetically, you could say mathematically, even genetically and mathematically, it's not the same thing. Uh, I mean, people, was No White Guilt said, people are different for their differences. That's what's important is their differences. No, it's not healthy for all these white guys to be, going after Asian girls. That's a bad thing, and we need to really tamp that down. But it's not the same thing. So I did want to be fair. It's not just women that are doing this. It's white guys too. But
no, but white men do race mix a lot less than white women. Not that white people race mix too much altogether. Still, I mean, it's not ideal, but it's still not incredibly high numbers. We're not in any kind of danger of being miscegenated out yet. But I do agree. I do agree. Yellow fever is a problem. I've never thought of it as big a problem. I still have this weird. I guess I would call it a deference. Like if I'm walking down the street and I pass a white guy and an Asian girl, I'm really not even going to think about it. The same way if I pass a white girl and a black guy, I'm going to be disgusted. If I pass a white guy and an Asian girl, it doesn't really register with me.
well, I mean, if you see like a tall white blonde guy, walking with a short Asian girl, I mean, you realize he's just destroying his genetic legacy.
Well,
At the same time,
their
their children are going to be relatively attractive compared to, say, the Afroed, what have yous coming out of the mud shark community. They're just going to be a different. I would argue, a superior people. I'll just say it. Now they're still not us exactly. I mean, I think they could be assimilated into white society a lot more easily than, say, someone who is a mulatto. That's my opinion. I'm very realist about this. I extend race realism to the mixed race community. I think there really is a case by case basis. And also the other thing, let me just mention this really quickly. When you do race mix and have children, it becomes very difficult if those children have problems where they need bone marrow donations or various other types of organ donations. It becomes very difficult to match up to them, and you're kind of putting them in a more vulnerable. You're putting your children in a more vulnerable situation. So that's something else that people need to be aware of. But that's all I'll say on that.
Oh, there's all kinds of very interesting bumps in the road with mixed race people. Like, if a black guy or if a black woman and a white guy conceive a baby, the black woman can't naturally give birth to the baby. She has to have a C-section because the head will be too big. There are all kinds of little problems here, there, and everywhere with various mixed race things. Now, white people and Asians, of course, there aren't nearly as many, but white people and black people, Hispanics and black people, there are all kinds of weird out there issues that arise that no one never tells you about because race mixing is just so wonderful. Don't you want a mocha colored baby?
And oddly, I would. Here's another interesting kind of side note on this conversation is I would argue that in terms of retaining the sense of European identity, the mixed Latino and white couples are they're the closest to that. Now, where the negative comes in on that situation is that Latinos are incredibly hostile to the United States and white America, and they want to take it over. So, someone who's half Latino is more prone to being, I would say, anti-white uh, in a very threatening, a very direct and threatening way than uh, say someone who's half Asian who, okay, it's like, yeah, half of me belongs here, half of me probably belongs in Asia, but I'm here and I'm not. They don't have that solidarity. Whereas Latinos, they could very easily just become reconquista types.
Oh, yes, I agree.
So I know we've been kind of sidetracking, but I think that's kind of an interesting topic. There's a lot of thoughts that I've had on that subject that I don't think have been addressed so much on the dissident right. But
no, I agree. And I have a lot too, but we could probably do a whole episode on that. Maybe we should do a politics of three on that. Oh no, I don't think we'd want Ted's take. Actually, oh god.
I don't think. Well, I mean, how long can these recordings be? Can they be like 8 hours? Because to get through his history,
we'd have to start. We'd have to start at the very south of Panama and work our way north.
Which actually, none of this is true. Like, I don't have any. Well, I guess I do have some. I don't have any kind of direct knowledge of Ted's storied history. So.
Well, we both have indirect knowledge in missions and implication. So
we have hunches.
No, we have no. You're underplaying our evidence here. But anyway, underplaying the evidence. It is a very.
I don't think he listens to these anyways. So.
No, I don't think he ever does. Fuck you, Ted. No, I'm kidding. He doesn't ever listen to Midnight Mutterings that I'm aware of.
Too busy looking up colored women on Twitter or on Tinder.
He is often busy Googling large Latina behind.
He's Catholic, so he wants those wide birthing heads.
Yes, it's important to have many babies. But speaking of these people who want to integrate into our community, we have this narrative of these innocent world travelers who seek to reside with us and are often offended by our attempts to defend ourselves and our children from them. And you had some very interesting takes on this topic.
Yeah, well, this was from a couple of days ago, and I have these epiphanies where, I mean, perhaps it's just recycled stuff we've been saying since 2015, but you'll have these neighbors, when they act like they're Indian, they come in, they bought the house in the suburb with you, and they're just pursuing the American dream. They act all innocent. Hey, how can you judge me? I'm just as American as you. I'm just as innocent. I'm innocent, and I'm not doing anything to offend you. But I would argue that these are the barbarians walking through our gates. Is there really anything? This is going to sound harsh, but is there really anything more pathetic than an immigrant? And this is something that I heard Richard Spencer say once. And it seemed I was like, whoa, that's kind of an interesting take there. Where's he going with that? This was a couple of years ago on one of these streams and stuff, back when streams were a thing. And he was saying that, the idea of someone just washing up on shore and saying what your country has to offer is kind of pathetic. Why should we respect these people who are basically running from their own kind? I mean, they can't float with their own people. So they're coming here, and then they expect every bit of egalitarian bullshit that they've been indoctrinated on by Western media. And we know who controls Western media, right? I really need to work on that voice.
Fun.
So they've been raised on this stuff. They come over here and they think, hey, I just come here and this is mine. I'm American now. Hey, I'm going to send my children to school with your children. And the thing is, I think this is what really set me off, was like, we have to send our kids, and we don't have a choice at this point. We have homeschooling, but, I'm starting to realize just how difficult that would be. And also, there's a lot of challenges. I mean, children need socialization. Like, I just took my daughter to the zoo, and she was more interested in the other kids there than, this giant white rhino in her face. And kids need socialization. It's really hitting me. And homeschooling be very difficult. So we have to send our sons and daughters to these schools where they're going to be sitting next to Jose and next to Mohammed and next to Deshaun. And, when these kids grow up together, which of these three young gentlemen is your daughter going to date? It's so destructive. It's so destructive. And so I would say, no, it's not right. I don't want you here in my community. I don't want your children in school with my children. And so they would say, well, that's a racist point of view. That's why do you hate me? Well, the only hate comes from forced proximity. I don't hate people of other races, to be quite honest, with very, very few exceptions. Turkey. But
that's an anti-Semitic trope.
Okay, let me just check my notes here, because these people act like they're offended by your direct racism, while they're attempting to infiltrate your children's in-group. Now, they're basically invading your community, your people, your history, your legacy from this moment forward, and then they're mad at you for being racist about that. It's just completely asinine. And one of the things, I guess I don't know if I've heard this anywhere, but this is one of the things I think it's my own quote. I'd say, get your own fucking civilization, pal. I don't need you driving around and, oh, I like this new BMW, and I like going to Best Buy and getting a flat screen TV, and then going to my suburban home, and then sending my son to school with your daughter. It's like, no, fuck off. Okay?
And these people, though, like, to just stick to the Indians specifically, India has this, like, huge pilot program right now for deporting. They're going to deport, like, 5 million people from one of their states. They're almost all Muslims and people from Myanmar. Anyway, they're not Indian, is the point. And
well, I wish them success, because I'd hate to see India fall to Islam.
And this is a pilot program for one state that are going to deport all these people who aren't Indian. Then they're gonna roll it out over the entire country. If you are not Indian, you are leaving. End of story. That is the plan of Modi, who is a nationalist, does great work in India. I'm a big fan.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm happy for India. But these people, these hypothetical neighbors of yours, or potentially my, that's
not so hypothetical, but yeah.
Oh dear. These neighbors, they would never ever tell you. You'd walk up to them and be like, yo, Rajesh, what do you think about Modi deporting all the, because Modi wins by a lot in India, especially in places like Assam where they're piloting this. They'd be like, yo, Rajesh, what do you think about Modi deporting all of the Muslims? And he'd be like, oh, I think that is great. We don't need no Muslims in India. And then you'd say,
keep India terms, but the Indian people, the Muslim people can go to the Muslim country. And then he'll be like, well, what do you think about Donald Trump? Donald Trump is a faggot. I hate him. He needs to be killed. He is a horrible person.
Yes, exactly.
Like literally, did you hear that? I think it was at a Kamala Harris political function here for her, her candidacy. And this Indian guy, she's passing the mic around for questions, and this Indian guy picks up the mic. He's like, Donald Trump is what does he say? He said he needs to be impeached. He is retarded. He called him retarded. Then Kamala Harris is laughing and like, yeah, he is. She didn't say that exactly, but who the fuck is this guy to comment on our political system? He can barely even speak English.
Right, and that's how they all are. There are Muslims like this. There are Muslims like this in Sweden, in Swedish politics as well, who they'll be like, Sweden is a racist country, and you people need to learn about the benefits of Islam, but then you'll say something about the Middle East or Middle Eastern politics, and they just launch into a fury. Who are you to comment on the Middle East? Sweden actually had a minister in the government. He was our housing and infrastructure minister, Hemet something. And
it doesn't matter what his name
right.
is.
And he fully believed in like the Sweden is racist and horrible and all of this stuff. But then he would go eat dinner with radical Muslim extremist groups in Turkey and Gaza. And when people got onto him about it, he was like, who are you to comment on Middle Eastern politics? Really? Well, how about you don't comment on Swedish politics and you fuck off? They want
like,
their
no. See, I'm in Sweden because I have a family here, and I have a business that I hire other Indians at and avoid paying taxes under the table and provide various services that the government does not know about. Like,
yes, and I actually had this is years ago now, 3 years ago. I was a member of European Youth Parliament, and I was a member as an alt-right guy, and oh god, I had fun, because everyone else is just a shit-lib. And
well, I'm glad you can take enjoyment from that.
I literally, the first couple years I didn't reveal my true power level, I just kind of slowly, but I had a lot of fun.
Did your hair turn blonde and start standing up? Well,
there was oh yeah, my arm slowly raised vertically. There was an Indian. One year I came across an Indian guy in Serbia during a youth parliament meeting, and I introduced myself because I'm like, okay, this is an Indian. Where the hell is he from? Like, I mean, of course India, but like, where does he call home in Europe? And I'm talking to him, and I had leaned over to a friend and made a comment in Swedish, and this Indian kid broke out into fluent Swedish, and I'm like, oh my fucking hell. And oh yeah, he's like, oh, I'm Swedish, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, you're not. I literally said that.
You like my language, huh?
I looked at, like, he started talking, he's like, this exchange happened in Swedish, and he's like, oh, I'm Swedish, and I was so dumbstruck, like, so taken aback, I literally said, no, you're not.
See, they view that as a victory when they can speak the dialect or the language that you didn't think they could. They view that as like they win, but it really doesn't. It just means they're conducting espionage or something.
I actually, in that moment, I actually felt kind of rude, but I got, it's like, oh, I'm Swedish, and I just, no, you're not. Dead eye, I'm like, no, you're not. And then I managed to paper it over.
Have you looked in a mirror, buddy?
Right, exactly. I'm like, hold on, let me turn on my phone camera so you can see. I managed to recover, and we ended up. I wouldn't say I was friends with this guy, but we got along. But no, he commented on things that I found deeply offensive. Like, he was very anti-monarchy, and everyone who knows me knows I'm a monarchist. But even if you're not a monarchist and you're a Swede, you should be deeply offended by someone who has no connection to your country other than the fact that they were brought there by their stupid Indian parents, commenting on the fact that your most ancient institution should be abolished.
They're so involved. I mean, like, what does he want, like the Buddha's footprint or whatever to just be dissolved, or does he want these old Sanskrit scrolls to go up in flames? I mean, you wouldn't advocate that kind of stuff.
Right, exactly. And I guarantee you, he would be like, I actually made a comment about Narendra Modi to him, and he wasn't a Modi fan. I mean, he was like a dedicated shitlib, and and I started talking about changing, the Indian political system, and he literally told me like, oh well, the Indian political system it's been designed by Indians and we like it and blah blah. And I'm like, I like my king too, bitch. Like, don't don't talk about abolishing the most ancient institution in my country just because you think you're Swedish and you're
They're
not.
so involved. That's the thing.
They're
Like they don't
pretentious.
even
They're pretentious.
pretentious. Yeah, that's a good word to use for it. Um, but the thing is, they get power, and they're getting power in places like the United States and the UK, especially. They seem to be like for some reason the foreigners in the UK seem to be very involved in their political system. And they don't even appear to be British at all. I mean,
Well, that's because the people who come to the UK are highly motivated people. I mean, a lot of them, like David Lammy, is an absolute bumbling moron. But his family came to the UK. Diane Abbott's family came to the UK as highly motivated people who hated the British. A lot of the people who go to the UK are highly motivated with a hate for the British, which is why they do what they do. They're not just involved because they want a better British society. They're involved out of a hatred. David Lammy hates Britain. David Lammy hates British people. Diane Abbott is the same exact way. You can keep going down the list with these people. They do it because they actively hate the place, not because they're just trying to be innocently involved.
so it seems like kind of like an Ilhan Imar here in the U.S. I would
Yeah.
say a AOC, but I mean, she's kind of one generation removed, I guess, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, she grew up in New York, so that's like a foreign country to me.
See, I don't. Ilhan Omar, I think, hates the U.S., which is fine. I don't mind if you hate the U.S. Just go back to Somalia. AOC, I don't think hates America. I think she just hates white people.
She just wants America for her
Yes,
people,
exactly.
or for her, but she's perfectly willing to use, weirdo bearded trannies and blacks and other groups to take America from the whites. So.
But again, if you think in the mindset of these brown groups who want control, and it's the same way with the Jews, the trannies and the gays and all. It's just a stepping stone. That stuff can always be eradicated again. They'll never the gays and the trannies and stuff will never have demographic numbers to be able to stop a law against them. They'll never be able to stop a backlash.
Well, it's like, if the Muslims are allied to the tranny community, I mean, how long is that going to last? The Muslims are going to outbreed them, because I don't even know if trannies can breed, and then they're just going to take power. It's done.
Well, they don't breed. Again, there will never ever be enough LGBT people to prevent their own destruction when a group decides they need to be destroyed.
This is kind of like the height of their power right now.
Right now it is. Again, everyone knows I'm very white-pilled, and I think in 20 years things will be looking a lot better. And the LGBTQ people and the Jews specifically both understand that right now is the moment, at least, especially in America, right now is the moment that two things have to be done. White America has to be disarmed, at least assault weapon. It has to happen for them. And white America has to be kowtowed into accepting election defeat. And I honestly do not think they'll be able to accomplish the firearm thing. And as long as one of these fails, they lose. And both groups realize right now is peak. Now it has to be done now, because if it's not done now, they are fucked, which is good.
Well, I wanted to say one more thing about the whole, people, immigrants in your community being appalled at your racism kind of stuff. It really kind of strikes you if you ever talk to these people, and sometimes they can be people close to you, but you talk to these people, they have no concern for your race, for your race's history, your culture, everything. I mean, it can all go up in flames as far as they're concerned. Because,
well, quite frankly, I don't expect other people to be concerned for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that gets to the point is that we don't expect any kind of help from these people. If they give it, fine, but it's nothing to base any kind of argument around. Just because Michelle Malkin says that birthright citizenship is bad for America, you know what? She's not particularly American herself. I don't hate her, but Anyway,
this goes back to the. Oh, did you have a take?
I was just going to say that if you look to these people, even someone you really care about and someone you can talk to things about, if you look, it could be your best friend. If they're not of your group, don't expect them to care about your group's demise. They will not acknowledge white genocide, and even if they do, they're not going to do anything about it. And if anything, just their presence is contributing to it. So, I mean, there will be no empathy from these people. And I'm even saying from the best of them, there will be no empathy. They are fine with us being scrubbed from the pages of history. And it's a sad thing to wake up to, but it's just the truth.
This goes back to like the Republicans hiding behind the based blacks. They have this delusion that the based black is fighting for white interest, and on some levels they are fighting for like various white interests, but not the interest of white people, which is to continue existing. These brown people will never fight for that, nor should we want them to. This is my entire problem with like the hide behind the based brown person narrative. We need to speak as a people, not speak through other people, which is what modern conservatism is coming to. Modern conservatism has turned into communicating white interests via a brown face. And I just find that utterly unacceptable. And thank goodness the alt-right exists, or else there wouldn't be any white people speaking for white interests.
Well, yeah, you can't hide behind the brown face because it's not your face. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to save. We're trying to save ourselves. We're not. The thing about it is, these people, they might not even, they probably, if it was up to them, if they're really pressed, if they were in the confessional booth or something, they might say, fine, you know what, I'm okay with being the only person of color in an all-white country or community or something. But they realize that's not within their power to control, and they realize that they are the other. So they're just gonna let it go, keep going. They're like these. If you try to get them to,
if they're not hostile, they're indifferent.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. There's no there for them. They don't care. Ultimately, they might say, oh well, that's too bad white people don't exist anymore. But that's because they're also indoctrinated. They've been indoctrinated by Western Jewish media their whole lives at this point, most of them, and so they have to overcome that indoctrination themselves against potentially their own interests. It's not going to happen. They might be your friends, but they'll never take up our cause. And like you said, nor should they. We have to do this ourselves.
Yes, we absolutely do. And I think that sounds like a fine place to stamp out the fire and bid everyone a good evening.
Yes, it's been another good one, James. I look forward to our next episode 10. Got some special things lined up.
We will have some special things lined up and a very special location. And we thank everyone again for listening. Good evening.